Since the dawn of time, women have led, sacrificed, and transformed history. Yet here we are, centuries later, still questioning if they can lead a country. Are we ignoring the wisdom of ancient stories? The Bible itself is filled with powerful female leaders who helped shape the future of entire nations. Let's dive into the remarkable stories of these women and consider what their lives might tell us about our world today. In this video, we will be diving into the powerful stories of women in the Bible, women who stood up, led, and took on roles that would make history. They were warriors, prophets, queens, mothers, and ultimately leaders. If we recognize their strength, we might start to question why society still hesitates to put women in positions of power. Could it be that America just isn't ready for a woman president? Let's take a closer look at what these stories reveal. Let's start with Deborah, one of the Bible's most striking leaders. In a time when Israel was leaderless and facing intense conflict, Deborah rose not only as a prophetess but as the nation's judge. In Judges chapter 4, verses 4 to 5, we read that Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. Her leadership wasn't merely symbolic. Deborah led with authority, wisdom, and courage. She held court under a palm tree, where people from across the land would come to her for counsel. Imagine that, a nation looking up to a woman as its highest authority in matters of law, faith, and guidance. But it didn't stop there. When she saw Israel was under threat, she summoned Barak, a military commander, and instructed him to go into battle to free the people. Barak's response? He wouldn't go unless Deborah came with him, recognizing her wisdom and influence. And here's the incredible part. Deborah didn't hesitate. She accompanied Barak into battle, and under her leadership, Israel triumphed. She was a warrior and strategist. She was trusted to lead in times of war. Imagine what it would mean if today's society saw women's strength and wisdom in the same way. Next, we have Ruth. A story less about war and more about unyielding loyalty and the power of resilience. Ruth wasn't born into a position of power. In fact, she was a foreigner in Israel, a widow and destitute, yet her loyalty and determination made her a pivotal figure in the lineage of Israel's kings. Ruth chapter 1, verse 16, records her famous words to her mother-in-law Naomi. "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God." Ruth didn't seek status or fame. She sought to care for her family. In a time when survival was a struggle, Ruth went out every day to glean leftover grain, enduring hardship to provide for Naomi. Her dedication and hard work caught the eye of Boaz, a wealthy landowner, who saw her loyalty and kindness. Ruth's faith and resilience led her to become the great-grandmother of King David, one of Israel's greatest leaders. She didn't lead armies or rule nations, but her influence rippled across generations, proving that true leadership often lies in acts of quiet strength and faith. Ruth's story reminds us that leadership is not about status, but about serving others, and that has been a defining trait of women throughout history. Then there's Queen Esther, a young Jewish woman who was thrust into a royal life, but soon found herself facing an unimaginable decision. As queen, Esther discovered a plot that would destroy the Jewish people. Risking her life, she chose to approach the king without being summoned, a move that could have led to her execution. In Esther chapter 4, verse 14, her cousin Mordecai challenges her, saying, "Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" It was a defining moment for Esther, who could have remained silent to protect herself, but she chose courage over fear. Esther invited the king and her people's enemy Haman to a banquet and used this opportunity to expose Haman's evil plot. Her bravery saved the Jewish people and exposed corruption at the highest levels. Esther's story teaches us that leadership often involves risk. She used her position to stand up for what was right, to save lives even when it put her own at risk. Today, we talk about courage in leaders, yet we sometimes overlook the courage that countless women show when they take on challenges, often with their own security on the line. Imagine if we had leaders today with the courage of Esther, who would risk it all for justice. Next we have Hannah, a prayerful mother. Hannah's story is one of deep faith and persistence. She longed for a child and in her anguish turned to God in prayer. In 1 Samuel chapter 1 verses 10 to 11 it says, "In her deep anguish Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, 'Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life.'" Hannah's heartfelt plea did not go unheard. God blessed her with Samuel, who grew to be one of Israel's greatest prophets. Yet Hannah's greatest act of faith was releasing Samuel to God's service, trusting fully in his plan. Imagine the strength it took to fulfill that vow, to let go of the child she had prayed so fervently for. Her story is a testament to the power of prayer and the surrender to God's will. Hannah's faith transformed her anguish into purpose, showing us that sometimes the most significant acts of leadership come from a place of deep devotion and trust. In our world today, where the power of prayer and faith can often be overlooked, Hannah's story reminds us of the unseen strength in spiritual persistence and the profound impact it can have. What if we recognized and valued the quiet, steadfast faith that many women embody, just like Hannah? Finally, we come to Mary, the mother of Jesus. Out of all women, Mary carried a responsibility unlike any other. She was chosen by God to bring the Messiah into the world, and she accepted this with humility and strength. In Luke chapter 1, verse 38, Mary says, "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." Mary's life was not easy. She faced criticism, rejection, and watched her son endure unimaginable suffering. Yet she stood by him, faithful to her role and purpose. Mary's strength wasn't in leading armies or speaking before kings, but in her steadfast faith, compassion, and willingness to endure. Mary's life shows us that true leadership often means persevering through hardship, facing trials with courage, and staying true to one's purpose. Today, we might ask ourselves, if we honor Mary's strength, why do we sometimes hesitate to trust women with leadership that requires those very same qualities? So if these women, Deborah, Ruth, Esther, Hannah, and Mary, could rise to leadership in ancient times, why does modern society hesitate to embrace women in these roles? Why is it that the same society that holds up biblical values still questions a woman's ability to lead from the highest position? It's a contradiction we should all think about. Proverbs chapter 31 describes a virtuous woman who's clothed with strength and dignity and can laugh at the days to come. In the Bible, women's strength, wisdom, and courage are celebrated. Yet today, we still question if they're fit to lead. The stories of these women remind us that strength, courage, and leadership are not bound by gender. From ancient Israel to the modern world, women have shown resilience, wisdom, and faith time and again. Perhaps it's time to truly take the lessons of the Bible to heart and recognize the power in female leadership, not just in faith, but in all areas of life. And as we remember these great women of the Bible, let's ask ourselves, if they could lead nations, why can't we trust women to lead ours? It's time to consider if our society's hesitation reflects wisdom or simply an unwillingness to learn from history. If these stories inspired you, leave a comment below with your favorite biblical woman and why. And don't forget to subscribe to the Great Wise God Bible channel for more insights on faith, leadership, and history.